Welcome, everyone. My name is Penny Pearson. I'm going to just share something here real quick so we can get started. And we'll have a few brief introductions and we'll get going here. Whoops, hold on. I got to hit the right buttons. And hopefully we can get this going. Let me know in the screen if you can't see the slide. I have a slide up of the COAB Digital Inclusion Week, and use the chat if you would please. That way I can see it as we move along here. First and foremost, as I said, my name is Penny Pearson, and I work for this organization called the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network out of California. And in just a moment, I'll introduce my colleague and we'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing today. But this is a website that's available to everyone. We cover all these topics that are listed here on the site, and the website address is down at the bottom of the page. Hope you have an opportunity to take a moment to check it out. We have some very nice resources available for you there. As I mentioned, my name is Penny Pearson. I'm a subject matter expert with the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network. I'm a 25-year adult ed veteran, now kind of sort of retired, but enjoying my time working on those projects that are near and dear to my heart, including accessibility. And I'll let Debbie introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Debbie Jensen, and I worked for 33 years in teaching in an ABE classroom and other adult ed course uh, uh, areas. I now work, I'm retired also, and I'm now working with OTAN as well, and we're excited to present accessibility to you. I'm glad to see that you are writing your name and where you're from in the chat. Please continue doing that so we can kind of know what everybody's doing and where they're from.
I appreciate that. So from the title, creating an equitable learning environment, I have a question for you. So when you hear this thing about accessibility in the chat, just kind of give me a 1, 2, 3 word response about, okay, what happens to your brain when you hear, okay, accessibility? What does that mean to you? And I'm going to try to find the chat again, Debbie, so I can actually see what they say. Oh, I see corrections are here. Great. Just quickly seeing.
Able to use. That's good.
Yep. Yep.
ADA. Okay.
Again,
Making things
the
easier
question
for
is,
others to use.
yep, making it easier. Good, good.
Universal access.
Compliance, ADA, equity, not just equality. Yeah. Thank you,
That's
Allie.
nice.
Okay. Any others? Because typically when I do these workshops, I get a lot of teachers that kind of have that deer in the headlight look. It's like, what? So we're going to be talking kind of at a very high level today on accessibility and what our objectives are. But we'll thank you for that feedback, and we'll try to kind of keep on top of the chat. And please feel free to put questions, comments in that chat at any time. Between Debbie and I, we'll do our best to catch those and reply to them. So let's take a look kind of what we're going to be working on today. We're really going to talk more about accessibility, the importance of it, some best practices, not all, and a little bit about kind of a continuation of what we've always done. And that takes on some nuances that we'll talk about, because as with everything and with change, we always run into these difficulties and problems and obstacles. And sometimes we can be very, very good about troubleshooting and finding ways around those. But we really want to provide you with some strategies to overcome some of those that may come up within your organization. So we'll talk a little bit about where to start. And just please be aware, we're not going to be throwing at you like you should do 45 different things. But we do want you to understand the seriousness of this and why it's so important, of what we're doing and how we're doing it. and what we need to do to change that. So we're going to talk about some stories that both Debbie and I have at different accessibility pieces. And then we have lots of different thoughts, and we want to hear your thoughts as well, responding to this presentation today, as well as we've got a lot of resources for you. So I'm going to go on and let Debbie talk next about accessibility.
What is accessibility? According to Wikipedia, accessibility is, quote, the design of products, devices, services, vehicles, or environments so as to be usable by people with disabilities. But I like a more personable definition, which mirrors this graphic. Educational materials and technologies are accessible to people with disabilities if they're able to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as people who do not have disabilities. And we might add, enjoy the same services in an equally effective, equally integrated manner with substantial equivalent ease of use as a person without a disability. Now, that is the goal. It isn't just trying to make resources available for the disabled student. Accessibility comes down to the ability to access for everyone. The beauty is that as we develop accessibility for those with disabilities, we improve access for everyone. As educators, from administrators to teachers to staff, we're here to make that happen. Next.
So when I listened to Kira's opening comments this morning, and I was very pleased to hear that we were very well aligned with the goal of Digital Inclusion Week. And we're talking in our description about kind of these three pillars of accessibility, and looking at inclusion as part of that three pillar. And we've seen this before, this whole concept of, equal access. And many times that means, okay, a wheelchair can get into the building, or there's a ramp as well as stairs, or there's an elevator as well as. So we have a concept of accessibility as being able to get into a place. We want to expand that out a little bit in terms of having that equal access to all things as part of education. There was also discussion about digital skills and how we are getting to that tipping point where we can't do anything without having the necessary digital skills. Whether you're a newly arrived immigrant and you need to get training, they need the digital skills in order to navigate the World Wide Web and the internet to find a resource near them where they can learn English. They need to have those digital skills if they want to walk into any of our large retail stores and apply for a job. And it can be whether that's on a board with a computer, a laptop, a tablet, or even on their phone. So we want those digital skills to be part of that process, of course. The third pillar, or that third leg, is full accessibility. And this is an area that both Debbie and I have been working in for many years that does not get that same level of attention. And that's what we want to try to do, is talk about why this needs to be a full-fledged third stool leg in order to ensure that we have a full and complete package for inclusion of that access, not only by getting in the building, the digital skills of being able to operate the equipment and navigate the web, but that other piece that Debbie just described, at that full accessibility of having everyone being able to have an equal or equivalent type of experience in learning the materials that they need to learn. So then what does that actually look like? Well, of course, it's the law. Okay. It's been around for a long time, since the mid 70s, well, mid to early 70s. There has been different types of amendments. There's different sections. You've heard of 508, 504, and we're not lawyers, so we're not going to go over every one of these, but know that there are specific laws and regulations that deal with the ability to make sure that materials are fully inclusive and accessible by people with different types of disabilities. Now, we mentioned on the slide deck here, our California code that says you must make things accessible. So that's why we put it in here. you more than likely will need to find your local state codes about making materials accessible on your at your educational facility. We also have this whole new, it's been around a long time, but for many of our teachers, instructors, and administrators, coordinators, when you talk about web content accessibility guidelines, or that wonderful acronym that we call WCAG, that's the rules that says how your websites have to be compliant. That means your teacher websites, if they post materials on an online format, if you have a public website that is offering services through that site of how to sign up for classes or register, all of those must be fully compliant. All of these are things that have been around for a long time, and they have different nuances, but it's something that you have to realize there are people out there kind of watching. And if you're not aware, you might find these particular websites interesting. Most of the time, when there are problems with accessibility in terms of that digital accessibility, getting through a website, using a kiosk where services are offered, there can be complaints filed with the Office of Civil Rights. Now, I'm going to show you a sample of what that looks like because I do want you to understand this is a real thing. So let me switch over here. Hopefully this works okay. Somebody tell me if it doesn't. Where am I going here? My PDF. So first, let me scroll to the top of this. Okay.
It's working.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. So this is a message that came out as a partnership between the Department of Justice, ORD, Civil Rights Division, and the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. And this is a long document. It's about 7 or 8 pages, I believe. And what it's doing is really it's really the whole thing about addressing barriers that prevent people from participating in online services programs and activities at colleges, universities, and other post-secondary institutions. And this is extending also to anyone who receives public funding. And you can read this. We can post the link in the chat. I think Debbie's going to take care of that, I believe. So you can read this on your own because it provides lots of information about the framework around this new regulation, about the different sections, what the enforcement to look like. We've had a very large case that talks about the University of California, Berkeley, that had an impact. So all of this is just saying, okay, we are going to start making this stick. All right. So now this has gone out to everyone. There's wonderful resources in this particular document. Debbie and I were just looking over the Office of Civil Rights. They have a 20-part video series here covering how people with disabilities use technology, more information on the laws and how to identify and remediate different types of technological barriers. Really great resource. And what's nice is those videos are in short segments. I don't think we saw any of them over 6 minutes. Okay. So let me go back to now what happens if someone at an agency files a complaint. So here is a copy of a complaint that was filed with the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights. And I hope this is big enough. I don't expect you to read the whole thing, but I'm going to let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Is that better? Turn these
Better.
comments off. Here we go. So this is a district in California, again, because OTAN is based in California. And it's basically saying that, they were investigated for civil rights infringements around access. All right. And there's lots of jargon in here, but I'm going to scroll down, and sorry for the roller coaster ride here, but it tells them here that they did an assessment and they found possible compliance concerns, including but not limited to graphics, images, or links were missing meaningful alternative text, posing a barrier. Links were not meaningfully labeled or titled, posing a barrier. Foreground and background colors of important content lacked sufficient contrast. Now, as of this time, this is the complaint. And then what's going to happen is they're going to look at some type of resolution. So here, after they've gone through the necessary legal process, and I don't know all the details of that process, but they come back with a resolution. And this is what is happening from the Department of Justice, Office of Civil Rights. They say they enter into an agreement, and it doesn't say this is an admission of liability or wrongdoing, but this is what they're going to do to remediate and correct this problem. And I just want you to kind of pay attention to the highlighted areas.
Penny,
Debbie?
can you enlarge it?
Yes, yes. How's that? Is that better?
Better.
So this is things that they're asking the district will engage in the following activities to ensure that their programs, services, and activities are accessible to people with disabilities. So I want you to keep this in mind. If you're an administrator, I hope you kind of read this and go, oh boy, I need to look at this, because they're saying that they need to have some type of accessibility standard. They need to provide notice that they are going to do this work. They're going to conduct an audit that will do specific things that will identify barriers in their program, services, or activities. So we can see this is conduct an audit, manual testing, reporting provisions that they have. They're going to engage in remediation. As those barriers are found, they will correct it. And that can be any number of ways that that's remediated, okay? And it has some conditions here. If there's problems, that's what they're saying here, that, you know, if you're going in-house or using other people. And then you want to update the testing and remediation protocols. So once they've got that stuff corrected, they should continue to test that their system and remediation process is working. So I'm going through this. This is my favorite. Develop a plan to maintain accessible features. This is a difficulty in California with adult schools because they don't have a direct accessibility budget at this time, and it's expensive. So it's something that, you know, should, in my opinion, it's my opinion only, should be part of the planning to ensure that those features are fully accessible. And then they have, you know, technical assistance available. But what I really liked about this, as I scroll down, is this appendix. Okay, it references those video series that we talked about a moment ago. It also gives you kind of the following things to check for remediation and ensuring your websites and your materials are fully accessible. So it talks about things like keyboard access. Can I get around your website or your page using a tab key? Can I make sure my logical reading order? So make sure if I'm using a screen reader that it's going in the correct order. Do I see a visual focus indicator on the screen? I may not be able to hear things, but I can actually see where my focus is, or my little flashing toothpick, or whatever I've selected on the screen. Are there alt text materials in an image that, you know, is supporting your instruction? Are the links well named and unambiguous? So they give you examples here. Color, use of color and color contrast, tables, buttons, headings. So they're giving a lot of information about the things that should be taken care of. So this is not just for web pages. This is also for the teacher who creates a worksheet, or they're doing some type of interactive lesson maybe online. They need to be aware of these things to ensure that their materials are fully accessible. The second part of this amendment is for electronic documents. It talks about for videos. Most of our teachers don't have that skill set yet, but there's good things on the horizon of being able to do it quickly, either through tools like YouTube or even artificial intelligence can create those transcripts. What about for social media posts? Many people are not aware that social media posts need to be fully compliant as well. So this is part of that. Yes, it's the law, but at the same time, there are ways that you can determine your, whoops, I guess I'm on let me go to the next slide. This is the page, and the links are included in the in the presentation, so you can get to this yourself. But this is just saying, this is what's happening. There's more and more emphasis coming down of compliance. As I said, these laws have been around since the early 1970s, but compliance has not been nearly as good. All right. And
Penny,
yeah,
we have a question.
yeah,
Does this apply to the GED computerized test or tape?
yes, yes. If you're doing an online test, yes. And sometimes that means that the way you comply with that is that you have some type of assistant there that can read the questions. Hopefully, the software is fully compliant. If it's not, then you need to go back to your vendor and put a little pressure on them because it should be accessible, the testing environments. Hope that answered the question. Okay.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about some best practices, and I'll turn it over to Debbie for that.
California's CDE was looking to provide support for the adult ed level, and they took a page from the K-12 system and wrote a set of guidelines for distance learning. And this is called the California Adult Education Digital Learning Guidance. And it's great, it's free, and we have it in the resources so you can take a look at it. We will be updating it because always you've got to be updating it to ensure the equity and access kind of thing that we want to do. But this part is from chapter 2, and this is what it says. And it's exciting to me. I'm excited. Accessibility measures the degree to which content, programs, or tools support and accommodate the needs and preferences of diverse learners. While accessibility might initially be considered for learners with disabilities, many accessibility features, such as closed caption or text to speech, are beneficial to all leaders, to all of our learners. So as we meet our accessibility standards for our students with disabilities, we will also be meeting needs for the rest of our students as well. And that's empowering and it's exciting. Next.
So, mhm.
Okay, so we've been doing this. We've been doing a lot of stuff. And so I've got to give us a pat on the back before we look at the things we still need to do. Think about the student that's coming from Thailand who's learning English and they need to get a job and they're really happy for the closed captioning that you have on the videos. Or you have a student that's colorblind and so they're grateful for their teacher for providing color contrast on the sites on the web so that they can also use it. Or the student who doesn't have a computer and they're grateful that the accommodations have been made, the things have been made to make it UDI so that their phone and their computer, they can still see the materials from the class. These are all accessibility things that we're doing. But, and as we do them, more people benefit than just those students. For example, if you're on a bus or you're in the library and you need to watch the video, you can turn off the sound and use the closed captioning. That works for everybody. I also love to use the closed captioning when I can't understand the accent of the people that are on the screen. And that helps me. We've got our older students that no longer can see the words on the page because of the contrast and their eyes are getting older. So as we address that for the one group, we're addressing it for everyone. And many of our students today access the materials in our classroom on their phones and all of these things. So everything that you do, instead of feeling, the first time that I was presented with this, deer in the headlights, oh my goodness, Penny was the teacher, I was the student, and it was like, oh my goodness. But what I have learned is that everything you do here helps all your students. Your class benefits, everyone benefits. And so, and things have gotten easier. That's the other thing that I've realized over time. Okay, so let's look at some of the things here. Equal access to information. This includes alternative formats like digital text, audio, speech to text, and other ways around text and to speech. Accessibility learning platforms. These include screen readers and keyboard navigation. Inclusive classroom materials. So the videos are captioned and the images have alternative text. Adaptive technology and tools. Tools that help people with disabilities perform activities in their daily lives. For mobility issues, it would include wheelchairs, automatic door openers, grab bars, ramps. The list for cognitive and sensory aids would include speech to text software, screen readers, amplified telephone equipment, computer screen enlargement, communication boards, hearing aids, and closed captioning. For universal design, or UDL, we would include, it applies more, how can I say this the way I want to? I want to remember and use equity and access because that's what this conference is about. And the materials that we buy. So your purchasing policies need to be adapted so that they include accessibility requirements, so that you don't buy something and then find that it isn't accessible. Now, the promotion of digital literacy, we want our students to be able to navigate the internet successfully. Accessibility is required for digital literacy skills to grow. So the one empowers the other. And finally, cultural sensitivity and awareness. As we embrace accessibility, we need to be sure that we also include those cultural sensitivities as well. Next.
And I see Beverly has a hand up, so I'm going to move the slide. But Beverly, if you want to unmute, you can and ask your question, or you can put it into the chat. Okay, Beverly, I'll give you a second to put that in the chat. So sometimes when we look at some of these difficulties and problems and obstacles, these probably all seem pretty standard to you. If there's some new one that you have, pop it in the chat because that is something that both Debbie and I look at and want to make sure that we're being inclusive of some of these problems and obstacles. So I know in the opening remarks today there and in our short little video at the beginning, many of our students don't even have access to the internet. And even if they do have access to the internet, they have economic barriers that they can't pay for that access to the internet. We have some school areas that don't have a good infrastructure and connectivity to the broadband system because they're just not there yet, or they're just too far in a remote area. So what are the potential solutions for that? Perhaps they might have had money coming in from ages ago that got equipment 10 years ago, but now that equipment is no longer supported because they don't have enough funding. I know that we have in California many of our adult schools. They can be their own standalone building, but most of the time they're in either perhaps older elementary schools that are no longer used as an elementary school by the district, so they can turn it over to the adult schools. Maybe it's in the basement of a local church in the community. It can even be in, the local strip mall, and it can be really difficult for teachers to be able to teach in those environments because they don't have all of that necessary technology and infrastructure to the internet, to equipment, to compatible equipment. And a lot of times materials that are posted are not compliant with these accessibility rules. That means like, oh no, teachers feel overwhelmed because they don't know how to fix it. And that is one of my things that I do a lot of, is helping teachers understand how to fix it and how to employ those universal design theories to make sure that when they start something new, they keep that in mind. So it's, yes, it's one little it's one added thing. I won't say it's little because for many teachers it's like Debbie said, your mind is blown. It's like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? The overwhelmed is a very real thing. So you have to provide that incentive. If you're an administrator or you're a coordinator or department dean or something, how are you helping your teachers understand this and be able to fix things on their own? Because like I said, at least here in California, within our organizations, our adult schools typically do not have access to say, a district accessibility office because that district is worried about their K through 12 materials to be accessible. And it's at a district level, and they've got 15 schools, and this one little adult school over here may not get the attention that they need. If community colleges often have that resource available, and that I hope would be something that deans and administrators would make sure that their teachers were aware of. Debbie?
There's two questions. Does
Okay.
this, okay, let's see. So does this apply to everyone? For an example, in an ESL class, if the students don't have access to the internet, is that considered in non-compliance? So that was question one, and there will be a question two.
I think there's a kind of a difference between non-compliance and equitable access. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer, so your website may be in full compliance, but if your learner doesn't have the ability, whether it's due to economic situations or they don't even have access to the internet at home, don't have the equipment, that's an equity situation, right? They don't have the economic means to be able to have the right equipment to access your materials. Now, hopefully, all of those materials for your ESL class are fully compliant with the accessibility rules. Things like, they can be navigated by a screen reader. You have alt text on your images. If you use videos, they are closed captions, etc. So that I think there's a difference between the two because it's really not so much that the materials are not accessible by 508 compliance, et cetera, but they're not accessible because the student doesn't have the means or the economic ability to purchase the necessary equipment to get to it. They can get to it in your lab, of course, if you have a computer lab, but maybe they can't do the homework, right? So what's the second question?
Second question, I had a student that had paralysis on his right side. He struggled with testing, and I was told he was not eligible for accommodations because GED or TABE didn't approve the request. What should I have
Mm.
done to help him?
Well, okay, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to say that again, but I would definitely have been an advocate for the student either by going to your administrator and saying, please help with this, because if the student cannot if worst case scenario in my mind, you would get a time extension because if he can't use one side of his body to operate a computer, then he needs more time to be able to complete the test. Now, I don't know your student. I don't know the full situation, but there are often ways you can appeal those decisions. You just have to have all the right information as to why he would need that special accommodation. And it seems to me that accommodation would be uh, I'm not going to say easy because I don't know the situation, but I would definitely have sought appeal on that basis. And I do not know what those accommodation requirements are. If somebody could do it, oh, I'm see that it took so long that he dropped out. Oh my gosh. That's just sad. And that's not right. And that may be something. Okay, I'm not, this is just me talking. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but those are the types of things that we, need to advocate for. And that's why I'm so appreciative of what COAB is doing. But that may be something that needs to be worked out in more detail with those vendors because that should not be an issue. And one of the first things that comes to mind is that if this person already has a qualification of being on some type of disability income, maybe SSDI, or they're getting assistance through the state, then that's to me a no-brainer. But I don't know the details of what your student is. And sometimes getting that information out of your students can be difficult because they're adults. They don't come necessarily with an IEP that says these are the types of accommodations that they've had in the past. And if they don't share that with you, if they feel uncomfortable with doing that, then you all of a sudden have to put on a very diplomatic hat to try to go through and make sure you can provide that assistance. And I admire that you see that as a problem. And I hope that you will, perhaps with your administrator or someone within your school, work with GED or TABE and say, okay, I have students that need accommodation. What information do you need in order to make sure that they get this accommodation so I don't have to see a student quit my program because they can't get an accommodation from you? I mean, I would be upset just as you are. And I'm sorry that that happened to you, honestly. So these things are very much, and I love the fact that, this is something I would add to this is, I'm going to call it non-cooperation of vendors, of TABE or GED. And I know that they're probably listening. They're going to go, wait a minute. We have a process for that. But what's happened here to me is that that process is not well known by the teachers or the administrators of those tests. And that would be something that they could strive for to make that an easier process. That's again just my opinion because I know our teachers work so hard and they want to make sure that their students have that ability to finish those after all that work, especially. So I think we've covered this slide pretty well. So I'm going to move on here and we'll go to working on some strategies. Okay. I really like that document. That was the Department of Justice, or sorry, Office of Civil Rights, when they gave the example when you are trying to meet compliance. They had some great suggestions. One of them is all about planning, right? Let's go in and see what's going on. Where do we have problems? And you can do a very simple review of your website, and it will tell you if there's problems. If you have and are fortunate enough to have an IT department or a technology division, they might be able to tell you about, okay, here's where the problems are. Okay, so that you kind of see what's going on, then you start planning. Who do you need to bring together? California has a system of regional consortia that are multiple school districts and the local community colleges working together in adult education to support adult ed learners. They can also perhaps be one of those parties involved in making sure that everyone has that equal access to information in different forms. I'm not sure where that form would take, but that would be part of that planning and assessment process as well. Then being the advocate, being the one that beats the drum around your school with your administrators. I mean, I love grassroots movements, moving stuff up the change instead of down, getting people on board to be excited and understand the importance of making sure that everything that you're doing is as compliant as you can make it. I fully believe in intent. If you can show that you're really working on it, you're trying to do this, that has value. If you're purchasing software, make sure when you talk to those vendors, you ask them very specifically, you show me that you're fully compliant with 508 rules and laws. You show me that you've got alt tags on your images. You show me that you have closed captioning on all and transcripts on all of the videos that is in this software. Show me, right? Make sure that those purchases are compliant. There's something that you want to make sure that the accessibility features are embedded in and not bolted on, because then what ends up happening is things break. And that's what a vendor can tell you. Okay. When you start to begin that work on that accessibility, you just take it in small chunks, right? I love the saying, you can eat a very large animal very easily. You just take it one forkful at a time. Use the built-in remediation tools that are available. Microsoft is, in my opinion, one of the highest level who offer built-in accessibility tools that can guide teachers and producers create to help them ensure that whatever they create in that environment are fully compliant. And it'll give you, it's a little accessibility wizard, and it says, oh, there's color contrast problem here. Here's how you can fix it. Or, oh, this image doesn't have an alt tag. Do you want me to build one for you? Or do you want to just mark it as decorative? Because then when it's decorative, the screen readers just skip right over it. So those are things that, you can make that part of your training and support of understanding what accessibility tools are available in the types of tools that you're using. If you're a Microsoft shop, there's lots of great accessibility tools. They have wonderful training online that's completely free. If you use Canvas, they have wonderful accessibility tools built right in. Each software piece that you use should have it. Have those accessibility tools, have that accessibility built in, not bolted on. The organization of that effort can be overwhelming. So you have to work as a team. Get your folks together after you've been beating that drum, after you have got that the folks excited about it. You're not only going to provide sharing and support, but I guess sharing is the big part of this. Once they get the training and they start building materials, have people share them. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right? That means that you're going to have kind of this repository of wonderful materials for each of your departments or divisions or whatever that case may be. And then you can apply that quality assurance and ongoing maintenance. So somebody is taking a look at those. Either, you're pulling it out of the pot like I do frequently with our OTAN materials. Debbie and I were doing that today, where we're taking information from other presentations and building it into this presentation and making sure all the while that we were conforming to those accessibility rules for an accessible PowerPoint slide deck. But it's a process then that becomes inherent in the workflow and not something that all of a sudden is like, more stuff to do. It just becomes part of that workflow. So does this make sense? Some of the strategies, now these are very kind of high level, top of the iceberg things, but do you see how this might be something that could work within your organization? Give me a shout out in the chat.
While they're talking, I wanted to remind you of what we talked about with CK12, which
Mm.
was a vendor. Well, it's not a vendor because it's free, but it was a program that this school wanted to use in their school, and they wanted to know if it was accessible. And so they used what is called the VPAT, which stands for Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. They wrote to CK12. They said, "Are you accessible? Please fill this out." And then they would know that it is fully accessible, so they could use it at their school.
Can you remind me, because I always forget. I always say VPAT, but I can never remember what it means. Voluntary
Product
Product
Accessibility
Accessibility
Template.
Template.
I will put it in the chat.
Thank you. If your software, in my opinion, if your software doesn't have a VPAT, ask them for it, and they can do the work in finding out the information and providing that to you. Ooh, I'm seeing the time here. Let's move on. Debbie.
I wanted to share with you a story about one of my students. I love this image because she will not be stopped. The trail was not made for her. They were not accommodating to her, but she would not be stopped. And I had a student who had cerebral palsy. He used one of those synthesizers to be able to speak. He was going to community college, and he used my ABE class to help him with the materials and the things that he needed to produce. After several weeks in the class, I had a student come to me and say, "He's smarter than all of us." And I said, "Oh, yes, he is." It was exciting to have him there, but he was not going to be stopped. If he had an electric wheelchair, and he would be zipping around the town, and if he fell, he just threw himself back up in the chair. But he was not going to be stopped. And that is the way I feel about our students. They are empowering, and they are desirous to succeed. And so we can make that happen for them by changing things and modifying things so that we can accommodate them and make it so that they also can succeed in our classes. Next
Mhm.
screen. Here's another story about a great accessibility. And this is New York City, and they have created an app called Evelity, Evelity, and it's installed at the J. St. Metro Tech subway station. It provides step-by-step instruction depending on the user's need. For the blind, the instructions are audio. For the deaf, the instructions are in text. Optimized routes are offered for those with wheelchairs so that they can avoid the stairs. So it offers the same transportation, making it accessible successfully by all the users, no matter what their abilities. Next.
This is my slide about the effort counts. And I'm going to preach it again. Accessibility is not a feature. Accessibility needs to be built in. And I really like the way that this particular image shows how we can overcome these things. This is a great example of in the case of hardware. This woman is in a wheelchair with oversized sand tires, and there's this wonderful mobile mat. That's what that little mat is called. This rolled out onto the sand so she can get all the way down into that water and she can feel the ocean on her feet. And effort does count. And we have multiple ways that we are finding that we can make these accommodations to these individuals that have different types of disabilities. And for us, our effort is perhaps in that simple act of when we create our digital materials, we just take that extra step to ensure that we use the features available, like in Microsoft, the accessibility checker. We just click a button, and what it does is it brings up a screen that says, "Oh, this needs an alt tag," or make sure that there's captions on this video. And it provides, if you don't know what that means, it provides instructions on how to accomplish that. So that effort does make a difference. Whether you're the person that's helping this young woman get down to the beach through this piece of hardware of this mat and this modified wheelchair, or whether you're the teacher that's taking that extra few moments to ensure that the materials that you're providing are fully accessible for your learners, no matter what their particular issue may be. All right. And there's many, many things. You're not going to all get it all at once. It takes experience. I know that I did that. Debbie talked about some of her stories. I had one student that was completely blind and she wanted to learn Microsoft Word. I was terrified. Long story short, she installed JAWS on one of my lab computers, and I could see her screen from where I was teaching from. And that woman kept up with me point for point. I had to make sure that when I gave my verbal instructions that she knew where I was going. So I couldn't say just click here, right? That doesn't help her. But if I said go to the ribbon, choose the home key, select insert, she was binkety binkety bink. She was right with me. So I can see that that takes a little different approach of how you teach something if you have a student with disabilities in your classroom, but it's not hard. It only took me like 15 minutes to figure that out. So it is doable, and that effort is is valuable. All right. It's something that I would just like us all to think about. This is not a feature. This is something that should be built in. We should make that effort in whatever form. If you try to make a plan and have people working with you at your organization, that's amazing. But it's not, an individual cannot solve everything. Work with a team, work with your organization, work with your administrators or your departments or whatever. That can really help make sure that that effort shows value. Jeannie, yes, department could advocate for that. Absolutely. And that's where, I love grassroots, kind of the bottom up stuff. But if you could get the administrators on and kind of have that top down support, that's just kind of a nice double whammy. Okay. So I know we're running out of time, but I did want to show that the slide deck does have many, many resources here. We are a little biased. We have some OTAN stuff on here as well, but we love what we do. So hopefully that these can provide some help to you as you move forward in this journey to make sure that your materials are fully accessible. And Debbie, did you have anything to add on this particular bibliography? Comments?
Well, it's an overwhelming task because there's so much. And so you feel like the tsunami has hit you. But there's a couple that were very, very, very important in my journey. And one was the OTAN accessibility resources, because they're all linked and you can just take pieces and work step by step through them. I also very much liked AIM because
Yeah.
it it was friendly to me. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything, and it said use this as a teacher, use this as a, and it was very, very helpful. And so those are two suggestions I would make. Get a team, work together, and share it. and you will find that it works very well for all your students.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm going to go to the next slide because some of you are asking for the deck. The QR code is to this deck, but it's on our Microsoft SharePoint. So if you don't have a Microsoft account, go back to the COABE Digital Inclusion Week page for our presentation. And Lindsay said she posted it there already. So you should be able to pull that down and have access to all of these resources. And I see we are, okay, I can't read a clock. Does it say 10 minutes till?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I mean, we're here for you. We got through that. If you want us to review anything or talk about anything else, just let us know. That's what we're here for. I'm sorry. I thought I looked at the clock and I saw 50 is 00 for the end of the session.
No. Penny, maybe you could show them the OTAN resource page so that they can see where that
Sure.
starts.
Just so, let me just go and stop this presentation here. And we're going to go, you don't need to read my email, I'm sure. So let me come over to, I think I've got this open in many ways. Let's see. So this is our website. And on the page, you'll see this.
It's not there. There we
Not
go.
there yet? Oh,
Now you're there.
got
Okay.
it. Okay. Took those gerbils took a little longer to get there. Kathleen, if you go back to the COABE site where you logged in for this, Lindsay posted a PDF version of this, so you can get it that way. For those that already have a Microsoft account, that's what that QR code was leading people to. So we didn't realize that until we just started the session today. So Lindsay was kind enough to post up a PDF of the presentation for you. So under the OTAN resource page or under the OTAN page, you can look under resources here. And this list, here's the digital learning guidance that Debbie was talking about. And then right underneath that is our accessibility resources. But just so you know, we have a lot of other information here. I know that Debbie works on teaching with technology. She writes a lot of articles here and also has done web-based activities. These are all available for you at no cost. So these are ways that you can see how other teachers are incorporating technology in the classroom. We have our lesson plan builder, which you're welcome to use. So these are these other items down here at the bottom, the provider directory, et cetera. Those are all more related to California. But if you are an EL Civics instructor, we have an exchange here in California where you can download free co-apps that our teachers in California have built. So I'm going to go and show you the accessibility resources. So this page is quite long, but you can see we've tried to what is the word I want? Outline it in a way that might be logical, where we have our resources and then getting started. So you can see things here about WebAIM, the Center on Disability, on accessible educational materials. This is one of my favorites here. The Accessibility Toolkit from Designers for Learning, they do great work. So these are all places kind of getting started. And then for resources with people with specific disabilities. This can be very helpful if you have learners that have a disability and they're needing some help, right? This is a way to find those resources potentially. Now, you probably have, if you're from a different state, you probably have a state for, rehabilitation or um, disability rights advocates that can guide you to where you can find additional information. So some of these are national. Some of these, I think we had a couple in here that were local in California, but they are meant to help with people that have specific disabilities. The NV Access, this is an NVDA, which is a downloadable screen reader, which can be very interesting for teachers to try to it's daunting at first because this is just a whole new piece of software that works a little differently. But once you do it a couple times, you start realizing how dependent individuals that have vision problems are reliant on the correct structure of your content. And that all has to do with how you build it in whatever program you're using, whether it's Word or something like that. There's ways to do it to make sure that that screen reader can get around correctly. We have accessibility tools for different software pieces. You can see we have them for Microsoft, for making PDFs, for Apple and Google and browsers. And then for those that do anything with WCAG, that web content accessibility guidelines, there's some great options here. So, one of the things that this is a big one to me, making audio, video, and presentations accessible, that can be daunting for teachers, especially if you like to do videos in your classroom. You really need to make sure that you have all the necessary tools to make it fully compliant. So that's the OTAN website on accessibility tools that we have. Again, it was at otan.us under resources and then accessibility resources. And hopefully all of you have found something valuable and useful from this presentation. If you want to talk to either Debbie or I'll put my email address in the chat. If you want to drop me a note, I'd be happy to talk with you. Debbie, if you do the same. And I really appreciate that all of you came today. I'm sorry. I'm letting you go 5 minutes quick beforehand, but that was my fault. Sorry. No, I don't think I missed anything. All right, gang. Debbie, any last comments?
No, it's an exciting adventure, and especially when you realize you're not just doing this for those that are disabled, you are doing this for everyone in your class, because
Yep,
as you get your uh, materials accessible, they will help everyone. And that's a cool feeling.
that really is. Thank you all. Lindsay, do you stop this or do I?